One random night during the week, there was the speaker talking about his new book. That was Gary. I said, hey, this guy's interesting. Let me look him up. I looked him up. I saw what he was doing on Facebook, early days of Gary's brand. And I just got more and more interested and say, hey, I want to find my way to this guy. I knew he had an agency. I had no idea what an agency was, what an agency did. All I knew was, let me get my foot in the door and find my way to him. But my ambition at that time was to start a company and pitch him. All I wanted to do was pitch him give me his money, and then I go do my thing. And then word gets out to Gary and AJ. So they call me in.
Give us a little insight into like what was the behind the scenes of actually selling a book to Gary Vaynerchuk.
Our whole strategy was, I'm Alex D. Simone, and this is episode 3 of Whitespace.
This is probably my most emotional episode that I'm going to film. And I don't think we've talked about it yet. But the human that I'm about to interview on this podcast is the reason why I sit here today. Because he has been the foundation to a lot of things outside of work for me, in support systems, in guidance, in knowledge, in just being there as a human. And I believe that he's one of the best humans that I've ever met in my life. And I'm really grateful for Team Gary to make me go through this journey with this person called Alex D. Simone. I always start this podcast with, who were you as a kid? And what do you think is the common thread that's taken you from there to who you are today? But before we go into that question, I want to really say this from the bottom of my heart to you, that I really do believe that if you weren't there for my early days at Vayner and how you supported me, how you guided me, how you were always there for me, checking in on me, making sure that I was navigating all the things that I was supposed to navigate and learn new things, new culture, new country, new city. If you weren't there, I probably wouldn't be here today, 10 years later. And I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart just for that small phase of my time on Team Gary. But you know what you mean to me for the last 10 years. And I'm just so grateful to have you in my life. So let's talk about you as a kid. So,
wow. Thank you. Yeah. I can't build on that because otherwise I'll cry. But you know I love you. Thank you for having me. Big fan of the pod. I've listened to all your episodes. Who was I as a kid? Where do I start? As most that know me would probably guess, I was a quieter kid. Loved sports, ran around all day, played every sport under the sun, whether recreationally or just for fun with my friends. Otherwise, I was an artistic kid. So I kind of played in both worlds, the quiet artist kid and then also the crazy running around little gymnast, athlete, whatever, however you wanted to call it. But that was me. I was a quiet kid, family kid. Family was number one. Friends were certainly number 2. I was very active, studious, a good kid, generally speaking. The kind of kid that before all the kids went out, the parents would pull me aside and say, hey, watch my kid. That kind of a thing.
I can see that. I can see that.
Still with me.
Talk to me about balancing the artistic side, because that's the quiet, thoughtful side of you. And then I've played soccer with you. And I've seen that competitive side of you. Mm-hmm. But I've hardly ever seen them in the same room. How do you, what's that like?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know. I love my quiet time. I would say I'm pretty independent. I don't mind just being on my own. But yeah, put me on a field. I hate to lose. It's not, I just don't like to lose. I don't like to lose on things that I feel I can control. which is largely sports, right? If I have a bad game, then I'm furious, right? I don't think I take it out on other people, my teammates. But if there's
More
something,
on yourself, I guess.
yeah, I'm very difficult on myself at all times. I do give myself some grace, but largely competitive. I've got goals and ambitions, and if I'm, not getting closer to achieving those things, then I tend to be harder on myself. So I don't have an answer. I don't know. I would say my mom is the quiet one. My family's very artistic in their own ways. I would say the quiet side is certainly from my mom, and probably the louder side of me, if that exists, is my dad for sure.
Who's more competitive in your family?
Probably my dad's just more vocal, so I would assume he's more competitive, but I don't really see them as competitive people in that way.
So because I know a lot about you and just like how you've rolled over the years, like, do you think being around family and so many cousins and like a large family around it, that's where you got the competitive side a little bit?
No. For one thing, my family is generally older. My aunts and uncles are old. My parents are old. I'm in my late 30s. My parents are early 80s, approaching 80. All my cousins are old. So I'm the second youngest of my family by a margin. My oldest sister is 11 years older than me. So it's not from that. I think it's, if I think about it right now, I never think about this, but my town, the place that I grew up in, was very sports oriented, still is. So sports were always a part of my life, and that level of competition was always a part of my life. But I was also smaller. So I think part of it is me finding my edge by being a smaller kid and proving that I could perform. So if you play a sport like lacrosse, like I did, I started late in my life, that's a physical, different kind of sport. But right away, even though my frame was small, I was hitting everyone under the sun that I could legally. But no, I'm just competitive. I don't know where it comes from, but I want to win.
So let's talk about winning. What is the first memory that you have of like working, like the first job that you had or the first money that you made that was like, oh, I earned this?
Interesting. So in my hometown, we have.
And where is this?
Forgive me. I'm from Garden City, New York. It's a town in Long Island. Beautiful town, lovely place. We have a very big community pool. Bunch of pools, slides, the whole nine. It's a great. You take it for granted when you're a kid because you think it's normal, but when you grow up and realize it's not normal, it was an incredible part of my childhood. So that was a place I went to a lot. And at one point, a friend of mine and I decided, hey, we want to make some money. So back in the day, in the Garden City pool culture, hemp necklaces, do you know hemp rope necklaces and bracelets and all that were a big deal. All the lifeguards were wearing them. So my friend and I started making them and selling them at the town pool. So that was probably my first taste of like creating something and then knocking on doors and selling it. I have no recollection how good we were, how long this lasted, but that was my first taste. And then in that same time period, Oakley's sunglasses were huge. So were fake Oakley's that you could buy in New York City for $5. So me and a group of kids, we went to Chinatown as kids. I'm sure a parent was with us. And we bought as many fake Oakleys as we could, the ones that we knew were cool. And the same pool, we would walk around and sell fake Oakleys for a profit. So those were my first two experiences of making money. And then my first real job was I was a lacrosse coach at a lacrosse camp and a soccer coach at a soccer camp.
Wow.
For kids. Nothing that impressive, but it's fun.
That's cool. I guess that's where you've like built your thoughtfulness and a lot of that skill as well, because I feel like the way you actually navigate guiding people and teaching them and like supporting them and all the challenges, at least for me, I think it's probably from your coaching life.
Yeah, maybe. I think a bigger layer to all of it is I adore the town I grew up in, but it's very much a bubble. And my family didn't look like everyone else. It's a very wealthy town. We didn't come from money. Still don't come from money. So there was always this dynamic of how do I fit into this bubble, knowing that we don't do the things that everyone does. We don't go on vacations. We don't have a summer home. We just don't do a lot of the other things that everyone else seems to be doing. So as a kid, I didn't know why we weren't going to the Hamptons or going on vacation. And I was vocal to my parents as a young kid because I wanted that life too, and I just didn't understand why we couldn't have it. So I think if I look back on that time in my life, I know what it's like to feel like an outsider to some extent. It's a very small case, and I empathize with, other folks that have it way differently than I did. But I think that notion of me trying to navigate that life in that world puts me in a position to say that other people go through similar things in different facets of their life. And I tend to notice those things and find ways to insert myself to make that person feel comfortable, seen, heard, have a friend, etc. I think.
I can
don't know.
vouch for that.
Yeah.
So cool. Let's take a step forward.
Okay.
How did you find Team Gary, or just Gary's World? Like, how did you end up being on Team Gary?
So, good question. Right after college, I had a year off. I was studying to go to grad school, to go to business school. So I took that year off more or less and took the time to study. In that time, I had an agency build me a Facebook app so that people could connect based on their recreational interests, meaning if I wanted to go pick up soccer and didn't have a group of friends to go play with, this app would, in theory, it never did, but in theory, would connect me to other people playing and would tell me when they were playing, where they were playing, and if they had an open slot. So I had that built, and then I had another website built for high school athletes. When I was in high school, the only way you can get recruited for sports was to create a highlight reel and send a physical VHS to the coach, an actual video. So I built a site that would allow you to upload your videos, upload your profile, upload your stats. It was just a quicker way for coaches to notice certain athletes. Soccer was my sport growing up. I was good for my hometown, but my hometown wasn't known for soccer, so it was difficult for coaches to even know that I existed. So that was kind of the itch I was trying to scratch. Anyway, that was my first entrance into this new kind of tech startup world that the world was pivoting towards. So that's where I got my interest in startup culture, technology, et cetera. Fast forward a couple of years later, after grad school, I was working a side job at a company called Lean Startup Machine, which essentially put on events for startup founders to come together. It was a weekend-long conference. And the goal was just for people to brainstorm on new ideas, collaborate, etc. That office was in New York City. One random night during the week, there was the speaker talking about his new book, and that was Gary, and that was jab, 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 right hook. So that was my first introduction to Gary and what he was up to. I fell in love right away. Everything he said made so much sense. It was right up my alley, marketing, brands, all that, at least stuff that I thought was interesting at the time. So that was my first introduction to Gary. And then I think a couple weeks later, or however many days later, he was doing another talk at, I think, Columbia or some satellite of Columbia University. So I went to that. And same thing, like, you know, scratched the itch. He was interesting, thoughtful, all that. And I said, hey, this guy's interesting. Let me look him up. I looked him up. I saw what he was doing on Facebook, early days of Gary's brand. And I just got more and more interested and say, hey, I want to find my way to this guy. So I knew he had an agency. I had no idea what an agency was, what an agency did. All I knew was, let me get my foot in the door and find my way to him. But my ambition at that time was to start a company and pitch him. All I wanted to do was pitch him give me his money, and then I go do my thing. Fast forward 8 years later, and none of that happened. But that was my entrance. So I started at VaynerMedia. I didn't start on Team GaryVee.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I started, forgive me, water break. So when I started at Vayner, I was 26. I had an MBA, which people told me was a good thing. I had some good work experience, and my only way to get into the agency world was to start from the bottom. Same with Vayner. So the only job I could have taken or was even semi-qualified for was a community manager, which at the time was the entry-level position.
Mm-hmm.
So I took a bet. I took a 50% pay cut relative to the job I was just hired for. Weeks, like started a job, worked there for 2 weeks, left and went to Vayner. So I took a bet on myself. Worked as a community manager for a couple months. Day one, everyone kind of knew my ambition of why I was even there. And they knew that I wanted to get to Gary and Emily McDonough. I forget what her title was. She manages the community managers.
I thought she was HR. Like that's how she hired me.
She was probably HR when you started, but she was with the group of folks that manage
engagement manager, EM.
EMs.
EM. I just learned the day before yesterday or something when India was over and she was talking about it.
Okay. Yeah. So she was my EM. Those that know Emily love Emily. She was great, super helpful. My biggest cheerleader for sure. Knew why I was there, and I think along the way she probably sprinkled in some hints to Gary or Gary's team that this guy is older, and he's in this role, but he's got larger ambitions. So a few things happened. I started Vayner, work as a community manager, which was a ton of fun. That was
this is when, 2013, 14?
2014.
14.
So I remember I worked as a community manager, remember seeing Gary for the first time in person outside of the 2 talks that I just referenced. Saw him on the street outside the office, caught his eye. I did a double take. So it was like seeing a celebrity in real life that you've never seen, and you kind of just second guess what the hell just happened. So I saw him. He noticed that I had a reaction. So he was on the phone. So he put his fist out, gave me a bump, and that was it. So we didn't talk. But somewhere along the way, I get an email in my inbox. This is not related to that last interaction, but I get an email in my inbox from Gary. I was like, holy shit, why is Gary emailing me? And it was a quick sentence that said, I'm hearing great things about you. I'm paraphrasing. I'm hearing great things about you. Keep up the great work. You know, 1 million exclamation points in typical Gary style. No, it was an actual email. So that was great. That was like, oh, this is so reassuring. I'm on his radar. You know, this is great. He knows who I am. Cool. Keep doing what you're doing. And then something happened. I was working with my brand team at Vayner, and one of our writers one day was noticeably just not herself. She's normally funny, outgoing, jovial, all the above, and she was just down in the dumps. So I asked her what was going on. And she told me that the night before, after work, she spilled wine on her laptop. We used to do Wine Wednesdays at Vayner. I don't know if that still exists.
It does.
Yeah. And
it's one of the things that we still have.
It's great.
You know, Whiskey Fridays, Craft Beer Thursdays.
Oh, really? So
no, like those are the things that were happening, but like Wine Wednesday is the only thing that's still there.
Interesting. I was going to say.
I think we were doing, there was like Trivia Tuesday. Like there was like something happening on Tuesdays as well. It wasn't Tequila Tuesday.
I was gonna say that's a lot of drinking.
It was
for the
it was
Vayner
probably
folks.
like more board games and things like that we used to do Tuesdays.
But now Wine Wednesday is the only
This
one.
Wine Wednesday is the only one that's left.
True to brand. So this is a Thursday. This girl, my colleague who I adored, still adore, was just out of it, distraught, not herself. So I asked her what was going on. She told me she had spilled wine on her laptop the night before. And back then, I don't know if it's still the case, but company policy was if you mess up your laptop, you got to pay out of pocket for it. So the bill for her in that instance was like $500, which, as most people, and given the age that we were, she was like, "That's a ton of money. Miserable. What am I gonna do?" So I heard that, and I looked on her Google Calendar and saw all the brand teams that she was working with at Vayner. So I blind emailed everyone on those lists, didn't include her, told them the situation, and told everyone, if you can, Venmo me $5. Let's cover this. Like, this is stupid. She shouldn't have to pay for this. So I do that, and then word gets out to Gary and AJ. So they call me in, they sit me down, and they just thanked me for doing it, yada, yada, yada. We talked, we chatted. And then in return, they gave us an open bar at the bar I used to work at, which was a ton of fun. We had a private space to ourselves one night, and it was just, it was a bad moment, and it turned into a fun little celebration. So those were like my first 3 interactions with Gary. And then at some point I got called in and he asked, do you want to join my team and head up business development? I didn't know what he meant by business development, but I said, whatever you want to do, I'm game. So that's how it happened.
So what was business development?
That's a good question. Still don't know. Anything that could help propel the brand was really the ethos. Brand strategy, build my relevance across social, whatever that means. Anything that was revenue generating, find those things or I'll give them to you. I want you to lead them. So anything from paying influential pages on Instagram to promote Gary and ask GaryVee, that was one thing, all the way to speaking engagements and selling books and leading those initiatives. So it ran the gamut, but I would say it was part revenue generating, not so much because, Gary can be, and it was wisely choosy with the deals that he does. So if it wasn't revenue generating, it was what can we do relationship wise, whether that's with real humans or publishers on the web that can get my message out.
Yeah, I remember being early days Team Gary. Gary had nothing monetized. Like even his YouTube channel wasn't monetized. And the only reason why I still remember we monetized it in 2016 or 17, one of those years, was because we wanted to control who could run ads on some of the videos that now had copyright strikes on them. Gary was very, and till date, there's like his podcast, 10 years in, I think you were part of like the first few people that actually published the first episode or something like that.
Yeah, I don't recall publishing the first episode.
It was in 2015, so I remember being there, but like I don't remember like who all were like part of the whole thing. But like the fact that it's 2025 and we've never monetized this podcast, which I've learned from you is like a whole world out there.
Yeah,
I think speaks a lot to how much Gary focuses on the brand and the top level of the brand being the well, as he calls it. So let's talk about going from brand to sales. And my first experience seeing you in action and being very awed by how you did it, just like relationships and conversations and selling. My first experience of the Ask GaryVee book. I still am not sure how much work went into it because I was still an intern part of it, but I know you
a lot
and I know that. But I want to know, because I did a case study for Crushing It 3 years later, 2017 or 18, and I did a whole math on how much effort went into selling the Ask GaryVee book for a New York Times bestseller number 5 to how little work went into selling Crushing It, New York Times number 1 bestseller. And the whole thesis behind that was it was a lot of brand building for 3 years that changed that. So I know how much effort went into selling the Ask GaryVee book. So give us a little insight into like what was the behind the scenes of actually selling a book for Gary Vaynerchuk.
I think what you just said and ended with totally nails it. Getting put on that book was probably a pivotal moment for myself on that team and in that ecosystem. It was the first tangible thing that I could say, hey, I did this and here's the kind of the monetary value, if that makes sense. And for whatever reason, that was more validating than anything else.
I even remember us having this conversation back then.
It felt real versus, okay, you got a couple followers on social. Like, what does that mean? Or who's actually responsible for that? So the book was interesting. It was obviously the first book I've ever worked on. Our whole strategy was, what are the institutions or events that we can sell to that would buy books in bulk versus individual copies? Obviously, you want to sell to as many people as possible. The shortest path to that was to sell hundreds, if not thousands of books at a time to one entity. The reasoning behind that is New York Times and all these lists, they count the quantity of books you sell. However, there is a caveat that if a lot of your sales come from bulk sales, like we were doing, they put a little dagger next to your name on the list to clarify that these weren't necessarily individual books sold, these were bulk sales. That doesn't discredit the quality of the book or the author or the messaging that they're putting out into the world. It was just our way to, quote unquote, hack the system. We weren't the first people to do it. We weren't the last people to do it. It still happens to this day, but that was my MO. It was, hey, Alex, this is your project. Sell as many books as possible. I'm willing to trade and barter my time for these book sales. So that was my mission for, I don't know how long, but it felt like a very long time. It's where this beard came from. It's a little grayer now for sure. But that was the mission. Sell as many books as possible. And that could be anything from somebody showing interest on Twitter for one book and Gary tagging me and saying, hey, get this sale done. So I would sell anything from one individual book to a human. To I think our biggest sale was 25,000 books for one particular event and partnership. I hope that number's right. I don't know. It sounds good for the story, but it was tens of thousands. It was a lot. It was a lot.
I think I'm not sure if this is factually correct, but I do remember this chart that I saw of the sales in the first week, and I think Ask GaryVee did 100,000 at the end of first week. Is that the right number?
That's correct.
Right, 101 something.
Yeah, I don't remember the final number.
It was over 100,000.
It was a lot, and I'm glad you clarified because my memory's a little iffy, but it was certainly low six figures, which was huge for an author to sell 100,000 copies on their own.
2015, Gary had less than 100,000 YouTube subscribers.
Yep.
I think he had 50,000 to 100,000 Instagram followers. It was a very different ball game than where we're at today. Because 12 and a Half, which was his second last book, sold, I think, close to 1.3 million copies.
Yeah.
And again, there was things that created that as well. But that number in itself is such a different ball game. And like now, this time, Day Trading Attention, we knew that it was going to be on the New York Times bestseller list. It's just which number we're going to get. And it was on the same list as Atomic Habits, which is a really difficult list to crack and stuff like that. So it's become easier, and that proves Gary's whole thesis of like just focus on building brand. And I think he's always been a big believer in that. In fact, it's funny because he's about to post a video tonight of him talking about social media in 2009 and explaining, and he says it in the video, he has 350,000 followers on Twitter, and it's 2009, and he's been on Twitter since 2006, and he's talking about how social media is going to unlock how people can do what they want to do, like what they love, and still make a lot of money. And it's the best time to do it because the recession's about to hit. And it was like such a timely clip.
Interesting.
And just to think about where Gary's conviction was, like he was talking about personal brand at that time.
Sure.
He's used those words, like just how he was thinking about it. Like it's his whole theory has played out over the last 15, 20 years of him starting One Library TV literally 19 years ago.
It's, I mean, the best word, not to give him that much credit, but it's prophetic. I mean, I've been watching the older videos that you guys have been posting, and it's crazy how spot on those videos were then. And fast forward 15, 16 years later, all that stuff is still pertinent, still resonates, still very valuable. And it's crazy to think that A, he was so ahead, but B, there's so many people still not doing those things today. Yeah, so there's a lot of things that I should have picked up in the past. I would have a lot more money in my pocket if I just took those things to heart from Gary, because he was spot on.
So for book sales,
yes,
if someone's writing a book and they want to try being on the New York Times bestseller list, or even get the most sales out there to have a good number of books sold, what are the 3 or 5 things you would tell them that can benefit someone who's listening to this and is like, oh, that was a good piece of advice, I should look into that when I'm talking to a publisher or I'm trying to sell this by myself, or things like that?
It's hard. It's hard to me, and I haven't thought about books in a long time. But B, I think we're in a weird space, you and I, where a lot of this stuff, we probably hold ourselves back from saying certain things because it feels so obvious to us, but it may not be to others. But I think that last note from you about personal brand is obviously spot on. I mean, the way I look at books is just pillar content, a phrase that we used a lot in our profession, is that it's this chunk of material that you've spent so much time on that if you can just derive moments and anecdotes and talking points and paragraphs and tidbits, whatever you want to call it, from that book, that is content, micro content for your social channels. So I think if you want to just tell the world what your book is about, then use that book and share as much as you are comfortable with to show people the nuggets that you're trying to put out into the world. I think that's the easiest path, because if you take the written word from a book, you've got videos, you've got quote cards, you've got articles, you've got podcast episodes, you've got everything. Your goal is to take as much information from that book, repackage it in as many ways as possible, and share it on the platforms where your audience is spending their time. So I would say that as far as content strategy goes, that's probably the first thing you want to look at and think about is how can I repurpose and repackage the contents of my book for a digital environment. And then other than that, just get in as many rooms as you can, be on as many podcasts.
Are you selling a book?
What's that? I might be after this. We'll see. Yeah, get in as many rooms as possible. Get in as many podcasts as you can, and don't pay attention to the audience. Just pay attention to the platform that this person is willing to lend you. If you could sit down with someone for an hour and talk about your life and your book, that's going to resonate with folks. Not the whole world's not going to see it, but you know, the famous quote is that you're one piece of content away, and you just never know what's going to take off or who the one person out of that 20 or 50 really resonates and opens up a new door for you. So take as many swings as possible. You have to promote yourself. Publishers aren't going to do it. They don't have as much power as they used to. So it's on you to go out, knock on doors, and try and leverage other people's platforms to get in front of their audience to hopefully sell your book.
And finally, the 1 week rule.
The what?
The 1 week, the first week.
What you should be doing and thinking about?
Because it's the most important. Everything that you sell from the beginning of launch into the first week is counted towards New York Times bestseller. So like trying to maximize the sales before that.
Yeah.
Because beyond that is just not going to count towards the New York Times bestseller. So maximizing, and this is something that and I'm helping a couple of people sell books right now, so I've talked to them about this, is how do you actually create value upfront that is so much better than what the other person is going to otherwise get in return that they're willing to invest upfront
In the book?
To either the barter with the book or some access or something where you can actually sell the book to someone for example, like if you buy 10 books today, which is going to come in 6 months, I don't want to buy 10 books today because I won't have it for 6 months.
Sure.
That's $300 that I don't want to spend right now, or whatever, some number around that. And how do you actually give someone value worth $1,500 or $5,000 to whatever your capability is, to then invest $300 up front in you? Because I'm still going to get the book on launch day. You're asking me to buy the book today, which is 4 months before the launch.
Mm-hmm.
So creating value so that people can then see what they're getting, what's the ROI that they're getting, so that they feel like investing early, because it's one, a limited time opportunity, and two, it's super ROI positive.
Right. It's a hard one. I would say that Gary himself is a unique character, because a lot of people are willing to make these investments because he's willing to appear on their show or be on their podcast, etc. So the value exchange there is pretty obvious. But I think if you're an author and you have something to offer, right? You have an expertise, you have a skill set,
or a product,
you have a product, a network, whatever it is. You just have to find ways to leverage what you have to convince the other person that investing in your book is worth it. It's kind of as simple, but also as complicated as that. You really just got to look at yourself. What can I actually do, commit to, offer, etc., in exchange for those sales? But back to your earlier question, the way the New York Times list historically works, I'm assuming it still works this way, but I don't know, is that your sales are calculated each week. It's a weekly list, right? But the first week is most unique because that's your first big splash, an announcement to the world that, hey, my book is out and this is why it deserves to be on this list. So that first week is not only the first week of sales within the first week of your book being published, but it's also all pre-sales leading up to that, as you alluded to earlier. So that first week is super important because that's where you can really double down and maximize sales to hopefully ensure that you're on that list. Because if you hit the list the first week, there is just this snowball effect that everyone who wasn't aware of all the efforts and shows and things you did ahead of time for pre-sales now sees your book on the list and says, hey, if this is making it into the top 10, this book might be worth my time. And that's the compounding that happens once you're on that list that first week. So listen, it's very important if you're an author to be on that list, but it's also very difficult. It's very competitive. It is not normal to expect that you'll make that list, especially as a first-time author. With that said, in the world we live in today, even if your first book or your book was a quote-unquote failure because you didn't get sales or you didn't get the notoriety or recognition, whatever, years from now, or days from now, whatever it is, all it takes is the right person at the right time talking about your book in the right place. I think there was a girl recently that went viral because her uncle or her dad had written a book that wasn't well known, and he was sad about it. Yeah. And she put out one TikTok. I'm sure I'm ruining the story, but effectively she put out one piece of content, I think on TikTok. It went viral. That book was on the bestseller list almost immediately. So you should do the work because you love to do the work, period, right? Write the book because you think it's valuable to a specific person at a specific time. That should be enough. Obviously, it's a ton of work, and who knows what your economic situation is. So I get why people obviously want to sell their book, but we live in such a fascinating point in time where something may not be obvious or might not work in day 1, 2, 3, 4, but it doesn't mean it won't work in the future. So don't lose hope. keep fighting. If you believe in the product that you put out, hopefully others do too. And eventually good things will happen. But
Patience.
Patience. It's a son of a bitch.
Cool. All right. Let's talk about life after Team Gary. So you left Team Gary. You went to Vayner Talent.
Yes.
And it was another version of Team Gary because you're really running brands for other people. What was that like? What was different yet the same to do it for other humans?
Yeah. So for those that don't know, Vayner Talent was essentially an agency built to replicate the GaryVee model, where there's a team, a videographer, editors, writers, etc., surrounding a human. So we sold that product to other individuals that wanted to replicate what Gary was doing for his own personal brand. And those could be athletes, those could be authors, those could be hedge fund managers, whoever was curious about building a brand around themselves, the human, we worked with. So the work involved was very similar to what we did with Gary or for Gary. The difference is that we had paying clients. So we had it was a little bit more buttoned up. It was a little bit more quote unquote corporate, right? Because, these are customers paying a ton of money a month. And they're betting on you to take their brand to the next level. So that was the biggest difference, in that it was client services. Gary,
more reviews.
It was just, a lot more.
I think something that a lot of people don't know about Gary is how much he's a yes person with how his content flows.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's always willing to try stuff. Even if he's not fully bought into the idea, he'll still be very open to like trying it if there's a reason behind it or if there's a hunch behind it, versus like probably most humans I think would be like, nah, I don't think that works for my brand.
Totally. Yeah. What Gary does is very, I don't know the word, but it's commendable. It's free. And it's all for the purposes of, I've got a hunch, let's taste it, let's see if it works. If it doesn't work, cool. We'll do more tomorrow. It's a lot of people are just way too cautious or insecure or whatever the word is, but they're scared to do new things because they don't want to come off the wrong way, or they don't want to throw off their audience, et cetera, et cetera. But in the fast-paced nature that today's world operates, you just have to. It's the only way to survive. You have to do new things. You need to test new things. You need to push yourself and challenge yourself to get your message out, however necessary. And sometimes that means you gotta change things and feel uncomfortable for a little bit. But yeah, so Vayner Talent was a great experience. I feel like I really leveled up as a professional in that world. I was working with folks that largely came from VaynerMedia, so already had this agency mindset.
There was client services, there was account management versus like Team Gary's like a WhatsApp thread.
Yeah, I want to be careful with how I phrase this, but yes, Team Gary was very loosey-goosey. We're all just doing whatever we need to do to get the job done, whereas Vayner Talent was a little bit more prim and proper, scheduled meetings, feedback, reviews. Structure is the right word, which I knew what it was, but I wasn't used to it because I just spent the last 4 years on Gary's team. So I learned a ton.
4 years on Gary's team?
More or less, yeah. I was trying to do this
math the other day. And it was always business development?
Yeah.
That was what you know?
Yeah. But yeah, so now we had it was an interesting role. We had to prove that the stuff that we were doing for Gary was even possible with other people. Because Gary is a different beast. Yeah. And you can't just expect to do what he did for himself without putting in the same level of effort or having the same talent as him or charisma or all the above. There's so many facets that go into growing a personal brand.
He has a great team.
Fantastic team. Slowed down a little bit when I left, but it was a great team.
So what do you do today?
Good question. So I'm still in business development. I now work for one individual, so I don't have a bunch of different brands. I work for an astrophysicist, oddly enough, by the name of Neil deGrasse Tyson.
What do you do for him? What does it mean? Again, business development.
Yeah, right? It's a weird phrase. This new role feels way more like business development, to be totally frank. But my job is to manage all facets of whatever's revenue generating for us. So whether that's the audio podcast, social, YouTube, brand partnerships, speaking engagements, book sales, eventually merchandise, streaming deals, whatever it is that is either a part of our business currently or potentially a new part of our business, I oversee all those facets.
So what do you think is if someone wants to do what you're doing right now, what is the key trait that they need to have for them to be successful in a role like yours?
It's really hard to answer. I don't know why I'm even able to do the things that I've been able to do, because a lot of this role is sales. But when people hear sales, they think of the fast-talking guy trying to sell you stocks or a car or whatever. I'm not that guy, as you probably have realized by now. For me, it's spotting an opportunity. What do we need? Who can fulfill that need? What can we provide for them? What is the value exchange? And just being a human, shooting people straight, trying to be fun on calls, I'm not trying to shove a sale down your throat. I'm just trying to get to know you, get to know the reasons why this partnership might intrigue you, and then trying to build that bridge. But it's, for me, life and sales in general, everyone's a salesperson. Every human on this earth is a salesperson.
Like everyone's an entrepreneur.
We're still debating that one. But everyone's a salesperson. If you want to get a bigger tip at the bar because you're a bartender, you got to schmooze. You got to have some charisma. You got to take care of your clients. If you want to impress that guy or girl, you got to sell yourself to them. So I see sales as just a necessary component. I don't like the word because it's got a weird stigma to it. But for me, it's value exchange, it's relationships, it's taking care of the people that are taking care of you. But you also have to spot opportunity. You have to know what's going on in culture. You have to know what's going on in tech. You have to know what's going on in the digital world, and you have to connect the dots. And you have to figure out, okay, if this is the dots that I want to connect, how the hell do I get there? Who's going to help me? What do I need to do to get there? But it all ties back to, for me, that mission and that, that workload is all creative work to me. It's not traditionally creative. I'm not creating assets. I'm not making videos or content. My team is, but I'm not.
It's creative problem solving.
It's problem solving. That's it. It's connecting the dots, which is what I love to do.
So if I wanted to summarize it, it's probably, one, I think the thing that you're the best at, and I've seen you navigate the world over the last 10 years, and I've been close to you for some of it, and we've not been that close for some of it. Life happens. You're really good with relationships. I think someone who can do business development, sales, whatever you want to call it, being great at being a genuine relationship builder is a key strength. I would also say the joining the dots piece is so critical, because a lot of people are not good at seeing the macro view and are so focused on solving the micro problem that they don't even see how it's affecting the macro world. And world could mean their world, or like their setup, or their limited purview. But like taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture and then trying to join the dots, creative problem solving, I think that's another skill that's really important. And third, I would say and this I would say is the most important weapon that anyone can have ever in life, is humility. Being okay with not knowing, being okay with figuring it out, being okay with not being the smartest in the room, being okay with someone calling you out for not having all the information. And I think that's the stuff that makes people unbeatable. Because once you let that fear go away of like the unknown, it just becomes purely a game of being the real human. It's not a sense of saying you're perfect or you have no flaws or you won't make bad choices once in a while, but it's the intent of trying to be genuinely a good human and building real relationships. And I think you're really good at that. So
I appreciate
kudos
it.
to you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's everything is humans. It's just people. And I'm not any more special than anybody else. I just do my best to realize that there's an actual human on the other side of the conversation or situation, and who knows what the hell they're going through. So whether they're being their most polite self or an asshole, whatever it is, there's a reason for it. It's not personal. But what I love to do is try and break down that wall and just let them know that, hey, I'm not here to get you. If this works, it works. If it doesn't, great. We move on. You know, I wish you the best, and I'm sure you do for me as well. So I don't know. I always go back to this example of when growing up, as I mentioned earlier, played sports, was considered popular, was in all, you know, the cool groups, cool friends. As lame as that sounds, that was the reality. But I was also a hardworking student. I certainly was not the smartest, but I did what I needed to do to get good grades because that was important to me and my family. So that's what I did. So because I was so studious and, you know, taking advanced classes in some instances, I was put into classrooms with kids I wasn't hanging out with, the smarter kids, the quote unquote nerds, if you will. And I loved them and I made friends with them. And when I would throw parties, my favorite thing to do was have your friends, obviously, have the older kids because that was cool and they liked me enough to come hang out. So I would invite my friends and the older kids, and I would also invite the unexpected kids that have never been invited to a party, would never even think about being in the same room with these kids, and bring them all together. And it was the best. It made for the best moments. Everyone was like, what the hell are you doing here? What are you doing here? Like, why is he there? And then it just turned into a fun night where all these different worlds were colliding just to have a good time. And that was my one of my more favorite kind of, I don't know, networking, if you will, experiences, was just bringing all walks of life together.
It's funny how you, like, when you look back in life, like a lot of your childhood and things that you remember of yourself, a lot of that is building into who you are today. And it's a lot of common themes, and you see a lot of that. And like, there's people in your life that have influenced that in a positive way mostly, and brought you to that point. And like, just you being the dot connector, even in those times, is like is why I see who you are today. And I see a lot of that. So that's why I always start with that first question of, like, you know, like, who are you as a kid? Because I feel like it's a really important thing. Like, people, and you said it at the beginning, and I think I've heard Babin say it. I think Zach said it as well when I interviewed him. You don't think about that. You never think of it in that way. Like,
when you're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now when you sit here and you have to reflect on it for the first time, like, it's an interesting way to just see yourself as a human. Yeah. Almost. Cool. All right. So the way that I like to wrap this podcast is
kicking me out already.
They're gonna kick us out. Is how do you bring value to the world? And to me, the way that I would like to do it is position it in a way where, what's one piece of advice you would give to someone who's watching right now, who doesn't need advice? They're not here for a motivational podcast. They're not here they've learned already from the podcast conversation, the book conversation. They've got the value. but they're just sitting there and they are in the middle of a situation where they have a dream and they are maybe somewhere in the middle of realizing that it may or may not work out, but it's okay to pivot. The thing that you did with your 2 Facebook startups and then
Quick
Vayner,
pivots.
Pivoting in life, being flexible. But overall, what's the one theme in your life that you stick by, that's something that you think that if the world did more of, they would be happier, they would be probably more successful, but just being happier probably is the success?
Yeah. You got to know yourself first and foremost.
Self-awareness. He's quoting Gary Vaynerchuk.
A lot of today is
Self-awareness part 1 and part 2.
Yeah,
Remember we did 2.
There's a long list for sure. You got to know yourself, and whether that is you truly. I feel at an older stage in my life, I know exactly who I am, and I'm very comfortable and confident in who that person is. So do your best to identify who you actually are, what gets you excited, what drains you, what piques your interest, etc. And if you don't have that answer, then talk to somebody that may be willing to shed that light on you and let you have a better picture of who you are as a person. But I would say, largely speaking, I have done so many things in my life. Certainly professionally, I've had 1,000,001 jobs. I've tasted as much as possible. In that moment, those things piqued my curiosity. Some of them were money motivated for sure. I'm human, still chasing money. That's always going to be the case. But I tasted as much as possible. And then when things didn't feel right, I moved on. And as long as you are willing to take that loss that the outside world might perceive as a loss and face it straight on and just figure out what your new path is and then work hard to achieve whatever that new North Star for you is, that's all you can do. Is just, life's too short to do stuff that you're unhappy with. When I moved on from Vayner, I was at a point in my life where there was a lot of personal stress with stuff going on with my family. And there was also professional stress. I wasn't having as much fun as I once was. And, I got presented with 2 different opportunities that were good enough for me to say, hey, maybe my time here is done. Let me move on and taste something new. And this new thing has been a blessing. So I think you just need to be secure in your own self to let the world know, whatever that world is, that, hey, listen, this didn't work out. I did my best. I'm not having fun. I need to move on. And maybe I'll lose some money along the way, or maybe I'll lose opportunities along the way, but I need to be happy. So you got to figure out whatever that happiness is for you. And for me, it's creating opportunities for myself, for the people that I work for, and being just creative in whatever facet of life that is. I see my job as creative, but I also fell in love with photography over the last few years, and that's just my creative outlet that I love. I'm not going to be a professional photographer, but those moments of creativity give me joy, and for me, I'll never let that go. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did. I'm going to wrap this podcast up. I just want to first thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
I think, again, the way that I started this podcast, I just genuinely want to thank you for being there for me for the last many, many, many years. And thank you for being you, because I think a lot of times people are there for small parts of your life and they come and go. But you're genuinely there for people. And I think I feel this way. I know a lot of people around you feel this way about you. You are the 2 a.m. friend. You are the person that if I'm in trouble, you're one of the first people I'm calling, because I know, 1, you're going to show up, and 2, you're going to bring a lot of calm and composure, and 3, you're going to solve it. And I think that is so, so important. And I wish that everyone in life has someone like you to lean on. And I'm just so grateful for Team Gary to have made us meet. And And yes, this is a really emotional episode for me.
Yeah. Thank you. Crying as expected. Thank you for saying that. It means a ton. I mean, that's all I can ask for. I'm never going to be a perfect friend. Life's too crazy.
What is a perfect friend?
I don't know.
Right?
But I just want to be that person you just described. No matter how distant the relationship has gone, just know that it's one phone call away. Yeah. Whatever you need, I got you.
Thank you. That was episode 3 of Whitespace with Alex D. Simone.
Somehow Babin got episode 1.
Well, Babin's better.
It's fair. It's true. Love you.